Welcome to Have You Heard, where we talk about issues at the intersection of agriculture and engineering. Let's get started. Here are your hosts, Morgan Hayes and Josh Jackson.
Welcome. This is the Have You Heard podcast. This is episode 41. This is our November-December update, giving you a little bit of recap of what happened in November and December of 2022. I'm Morgan Hayes, an assistant professor in Biosystems and Agricultural Engineering at the University of Kentucky, focusing on livestock facilities. And in my personal life, I farm in Boyle County, Kentucky with my husband, about a 500-acre operation, primarily commercial cattle and hay.
And I'm Josh Jackson, assistant professor in Biosystems and Agriculture Engineering as well. I farm and I focus on mainly precision livestock farming, and I actually farm in Mercer County where we produce hay and registering as cattle.
Okay, Josh. So a little bit before we get into our recap of November, December, what happened in the last week on the farm?
Just the usual little challenge. So we had another tractor where the starter apparently had gone out. So went ahead and getting that rebuilt, and then in the process of, I thought it was a battery. In the process of getting the battery out and checking that, I broke the sidewall of the battery, so that pretty much had to get a new battery as well. So it's just one of those. You had one of those days where you're just chasing your own tail, trying to put out hay.
Yep.
So bad luck, but eventually got it all taken care of, and just pretty much putting out hay and making sure animals stay fed and watered. So it's been it's cool but not cold. So waterers have been fine, just making sure animals have plenty of hay available.
Makes sense. Yeah, we're doing similar things. We're feeding animals. That's a full-time task right now.
Yep.
I had to make a trip for work up to Ohio, and so we had to do a little bit of planning for being out of town for a couple days. Other than that, though, everything has been going fairly smoothly. I don't want to
knock on wood.
knock on wood right now. My luck, the way it's been, and we'll cover that in our recap. It's been a pretty wild ride, so we're just getting everything sort of settled back in with a new routine now, and things are going pretty well. We have been working on a fence that's also going to come up in the recap, but just sort of putting final touches onto a fence.
Okay.
So that's been
fairly calm January thus far.
A fairly calm January. And it hasn't been that wet. We missed rain. I guess it was last week when we have a little bit, but was it last week where the rain came through on Sunday?
I think it was Sunday. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Good.
We didn't get a huge amount. We got a small amount of rain, but nothing to make the ground too wet. It's still dry enough to potentially drive out in the field in a truck and not get stuck. So
okay, so you guys are pretty dry then, or fairly dry.
I wouldn't say we're dry, but we're certainly not as wet as we could be.
Okay,
just the way the storms came through, it was a little bit not too bad on Sunday.
All right.
Yeah. So let's go back to beginning in November and talk about basically big projects that were happening on the farm in November. And I know there were some things happening in November, Josh.
So in November, we similar to you, we're working on fence. So we rented an excavator. Our fence line, it's never in a good spot. So it was on a hillside next to a stream. And so we actually decided to move it towards us a little bit just to make life a lot simpler. Otherwise, we've been on that edge of the stream, and it was going to be difficult. So we rented an excavator, took out a good portion of fence with that, and the other farmer came in and helped us. He leveled it with his skid steer with tracks. Okay. So went in there, drove what we could, drilled the rest. We went in there with the post driver, drove whatever post we could, came back and drilled the ones that were going to be a pain.
Okay.
Or ones that were going to be on a very, very good tilt.
Yeah.
As well.
Something that needed a little more stability, and you weren't going to get it with the driver. It was going to move.
Yep.
Post was going to walk route.
So went ahead and got that. So about 2,000 foot fence, got it cleaned out, got a post put in the ground. And then went through and put up some fixed knot high tensile.
Yeah.
So we've kind of been fairly pleased with that, and so we've used that throughout the line, and so it actually went up fairly fast. And we have our steeple gun. I'm a big fan of using the steeple gun because it just as fast as you can count, you put a steeple in.
Yeah. It is nice, I would imagine, to do that. We don't have one, so that's not how our fencing project went. We actually started our fencing project about a week and a half before Thanksgiving. We cleared out the old fence line. It's a property line fence. Got the posts out, got the wire out. Getting barbed wire out is always kind of a pain, so that was get it rolled up and out of the way. And then we were planning to come back in the next day and start working on posts, and we ended up having a house fire, a pretty significant one. So we're currently reworking our living situation for the next couple years. So that's it's going to be exciting for a little while around here for us.
It's actually a chimney fire.
It was a chimney fire. Fortunately, just a reminder for folks that you have chimneys is that you should get them cleaned every year. You should dry your wood out before you burn it. Don't burn anything green. And then if you have the ability, you should hire someone with a scope to look at your chimney and make sure there's no structural damage. In our case, it was not the wood or the cleaning not happening. It was a structural issue in the chimney. And it had just been cleaned. So unfortunately, it's just the nature of
the older houses.
Or it's a risk in general. This is the newest house we've ever lived in, and it still had the issue. So, but we are okay. Animals got out okay. Fire company did an amazing job. So, however, it really threw a wrench into our farm plans.
Yeah.
Because we had big plans. It was Thanksgiving week. We were hoping to actually knock out the whole fencing project, and instead we spent the whole week clearing out a house.
Yeah, of all the stuff
personal property that we could salvage, and then documenting what we couldn't. So, but we're doing a little better now. That's good. And the fencing project did continue. It took us until between Christmas and New Year's to finish the project. That's where we found more time to do that.
So different holiday.
We finished it before the New Year, which was remarkable for us. We were not sure that was going to happen after all of the trauma of late November. So we do have a new fence up. That's good. That's keeping our heifers in because they're on that property. They were pushed into a little field, and we were only thinking they were going to be in there for a week, but they were in there for significantly longer than a week. So they've made it back into one of the winter lots. So
that's good.
And they seem to be doing well. We're still finishing up that fencing project. I said we're doing final touches. Things like running the hot wire across the top of it's a fixed, not high tensile fence as well. But putting a hot wire on the top to protect the fence from the animals, which are always destructive little buggers. But got to keep something on there to make sure they don't rub or lean on it or push on it. And so we prefer a hot wire rather than a barbed wire across the top. And so that's what we're putting up right now.
All right. And you guys, on your corner post, you guys use the little T-gripples or?
We do.
We use them as well, and just to save so much time, I guess.
Saves a tremendous amount of time. And one of the things, for anyone that isn't familiar with fencing, the way high tensile fence works is a high tensile wire is a high carbon steel wire, has memory to it, but it doesn't stretch the same way a traditional woven wire fence. Traditional woven wire would stretch about 10%. This is about 1% stretch. And so what you want to do is you want to wrap it around your end post and tie it back onto itself so that the pressure goes all the way around the post, and the post is basically holding in against a large area of that wire to pull tension. And you can pull significantly more tension with a high tensile fence. It's very, very good for pulling tension. It's
much higher tensile strength.
Somewhere in the 170 kilo newtons.
Okay. That was
newtons, right?
That was KPI or KSI.
Might be KSI.
125 KSI, I think.
Yep. So a pretty high tension strength on it. And so it's really important that you get uniformity around the post to get the post and the wire the best chance of holding up. And one thing that we found is when we tried to tie it by hand, even using proper knotting methods, it was difficult to get it to really tighten in on all of the horizontal stays uniformly. But with the T-gripples, we can really adjust them so that we actually hold square to the post and that every one of the wires gets tensioned relatively the same. And so that was sort of our goal. So that's what we did.
Okay. Yeah, I know we spend, could be on a traditional fence if we had number 9 wire all the way, or it'd be anywhere from, or the traditional wire 911, it would be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour twisting all those wires. Yep. And it's probably within 10 minutes, I guess.
Yep, you can drop in
the T-ripples.
Yeah, so they work great. They do two things. One, they save you a lot of time, but two, they also
cinch up.
They provide up a nice cinch, on all of the posts, because the post is tapered and they're not all the same size. So figuring out how tight to pull tension is a little trickier, and that allows you to get sort of a more uniform pull across all of your horizontal stays.
Yeah, so it definitely does work a little better. And I know on our farm, we also, we worked on the fence, but we also worked on a hoop barn. So we had a guy come out and level it for us. We were working on a fence during Thanksgiving. A guy came, leveled it for us, a pad for us, and we put up a hoop barn. So, was it 22 out of the 23 holes had a rock in them, at least 5 inches thick. So.
And what dimension hoop barn, just so people know what size you're talking
it was a 33 by 72.
33 by 72. Okay.
So a good size, so it should hold about 144 of our big round bales.
Okay.
And so we put that, drilled our holes, leveled out the first 3 or 4 are always the most difficult to put in. Well, the first one's easy. Yeah. And then everything else has to be based on that.
Yeah.
Everything else. So we put the first post in and then pretty much set up the rest of them.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a pretty nice extension pub on building a hoop barn. So if anyone is curious, Josh and I have both had a lot of experience with that. We've
worked on several, more than 5+ hoop barns.
Yeah, 5+. We have 5 on my farm and 3 on your farm, but two that you've been engaged in building as an adult.
Yeah.
So we've had a little bit of a chance to build some hoop barns in our time, and so that's kind of exciting. I'm sad I missed the process. I kind of enjoy the process. For people that don't know, Josh and his twin brother and my husband are all ground animals.
Yes,
not one of them will go up in the air. So Josh's other brother and myself are the only two that are willing to go up to the top of the hoop.
I did have my wife go up to the top this year as well.
I bet she loved that.
Oh, she loved it. Yes, as much as you would think.
I'm sure she's like, "Wow, I'm not sure about this. This is not what I signed up for."
Oh, that was definitely part of the comments.
The part that you're allowed to repeat on air.
Yep.
So that's sort of, it's always an entertaining process, but I actually don't mind heights, so that's not a big problem for me.
And you do have to have some people on the ground to just
absolutely
secure. You have to have them drive the tractor and secure your braces on the ground down. So
yeah, a good tractor driver makes the whole process of being the person in the air. Or if you have a cherry picker, any sort of lift you're using, whoever is on the ground managing that it's an important role for the person in the air. So
yep, and just feeding them supplies, and we actually had both the tractor and the backhoe out there. So we had one doing kind of the side pipes and one in the middle. So we were trying to be as efficient as we could be. What we had.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, wasn't too bad. So we put up the hoop barn, and then I think that was pretty much, by the time we did the hoop barn and the fence, that was pretty much most of our time.
Yeah, I would bet that takes up. I mean, I don't know for you, but for us, when we're really into hay feeding season, we can spend half of a day feeding hay any day, every day. Easily be 4 or 5 hours a day, just to get all the animals fed, checked, water checked on them. So bigger projects like this that we get done are major accomplishments in the sense that we only get a few hours of daylight to actually work on them every day. Or if we're really smart and pretty cognizant, we can really get enough done during the week that we can have a longer stretch on the weekend when there's more people home,
right?
To work on it. But even when we're planning to the best of our ability, there's still only
so much day. We always say there's only so much day. Like, why do we do this when it's the shortest days of the year?
I know. But to be fair, this was a dry fall, so these projects getting done were critical because it's going to get wetter. I mean, it's just the nature of Kentucky in the wintertime is that it's getting wet now. It's been wet a little bit here and there, but it's going to get more muddy, and these projects are going to become impossible to do in February and March. and we'll hope that we can maybe start them again in April. But realistically, some years we get dried out in April, and other years we don't dry out until the middle of May. So we don't know exactly where that drying is going to occur this year.
Right, and it's always a variable. And at some point, we'll have to have Matt Dixon on here again to talk about what happened last year and what's coming, what to expect for this upcoming year. But it's usually those Februarys. The past couple have been
very wet,
very, very wet. 8+ inches of rain. Some years 10+ inches. So it's definitely a challenge.
Yep. So that's sort of on our agenda. That was for us. Our big project was the fence that we got done. We had some equipment get cleaned up. We had to use the bush hog to finish clearing out this fence line. This is not one that needs like an excavator or anything to clear. It's one that's been maintained fairly well, but did need to get bush hogged. So that got done, and then that equipment got put away for the winter.
Okay.
We got a bunch of other equipment put away, reorganized some things. We sell a lot of hay, so that's the other big thing that takes up significant portions of our time is delivering hay.
Yep.
We're now in the season where delivering hay is a pretty large time sink as well. So those are the big things happening primarily in November and December. Also, we had to make another trip out of town in November, and we were gone for a full week. And for us in the wintertime, that's a big deal to be gone for a full week, because it takes a lot of planning and a lot of support from
a lot of coordination, probably a lot of putting out hay ahead of time.
A lot of hay out ahead of time. For our rented farm where we don't have a hay feeding system, we had to put out hay in a couple different spots some of it was bale grazed, but some of it was just stockpiled hay bales in groups of area where they were accessible at different times.
Okay.
Which all of that worked out. No one had to put out hay there, which is good, because when you're not sure about the weather, you don't want to ask someone else to try and drive a tractor when they aren't familiar with the terrain. So,
or even the nuances of the tractor.
The nuances of the tractor. I mean, and this year there were some days it was cold enough you wouldn't have wanted to be starting a tractor if you didn't know what you were doing.
Right.
So we got all of that done. That was another accomplishment, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Okay. Well, not a farm thing on our farm, but we did have a field day down in Oldham County about tractor maintenance. So changing oil, changing, this time of year it's that time of year to work on tractor maintenance. So we did changing oil, changing fuel filters, air filters, and then just overall maintenance of the machine. So we did have that down there in Oldham County. So went fairly well, and I think got a lot of generally positive feedback.
Good. Yeah, I think that is an interesting topic. Yeah, we have probably done a poor job this fall, early winter with doing the annual maintenance. We actually change our oil by hours on the tractor, because we turn enough hours that we do end up changing it more than once a year in most cases, or right at once a year. But certainly getting our filters, our air filters, fuel filters, things like that changed out in the spring is a priority. So
usually, we do ours in March, April, but we've done some in December, just fuel filters in December, just because we don't want the stuff to freeze up on us.
Right. Yeah. And what you actually buy all of your filters once a year, isn't that what you do?
Yep, we do one big purchase just whenever they have a sale on filters, whether it's CarQuest or whichever AutoZone, whatever company has it on sale. We'll typically go there and get our filters on sale, like half off potentially. And so we'll get our filters, oil, everything all at once for the upcoming year.
It's interesting. I think that's probably a pretty smart strategy. And that way, if you buy them all at once, you know which ones you've changed and haven't changed. So you don't have to keep track of hours and things like that. We, for our oil filters, we actually mark out our hours. We scratch them out on the bottom of the filter so that we know when we're changing them again.
And on 2 of our tractors, we can do that. The one doesn't really have an hour meter anymore, so.
Okay. Well, that makes it more.
It's been the same hours for a number of years now, so.
So you're pretty sure you should still change it, even though the hour meter isn't moving. That's a good plan on your part. Yeah.
And and that's the crazy thing. Sometimes those little hour meter, the stuff like that can be expensive.
Yeah.
But surprisingly expensive. So a lot of times we're like, well, if it's going to the shop, it's going to the shop for something important. If it's there, we'll try to get something like that fixed, if possible.
Right. Makes sense. Have you been doing any, like, the one other thing I will say is you said you cleared a fence line. We actually took down a number of trees, number of ash, that aren't on a fence, but that could potentially have become on a fence in the next year or two. Ironically, after the fire, we have nowhere to burn these trees, but we still have to take them down. So we're just sort of working our way through some of our fence lines right now and getting them cleaned out.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I mean, our goal in the past couple of fences, because we had one fence we put in, and then it seemed like we were clearing 10, 20 foot off the fence line. It seemed like there was a couple ash trees that must have been weren't struck by lightning, but they definitely seemed like they must have jumped to try to hit the fence. So we had two that came out of nowhere, and it seemed like it must have been the wind blowing or something, and they came and jumped on our fence. So we really try to clean out at least 20 foot approximately from the fence.
do you have a lot of trees that aren't in fence lines, or does that leave you with pastures that are more difficult in the summer because they don't have shade?
Well, and our philosophy is like if it's an ash tree, it's definitely going. Ash trees definitely go. But if it's a big oak, and if I can wrap my arms around it and not touch my fingers, I usually leave that one in the fence line. We'll go around it. We'll do something.
A hardwood, basically.
A hardwood. Anything else, though, it's going.
Okay.
So if it's a good hardwood, we'll leave it. Otherwise, they're gone.
Yeah.
And so we had the 30,000-pound excavator, so it's fairly easy to take out most trees. If it's 1-2 foot diameter, it'll take you a little time, but it can be done.
It. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I was just curious how you were handling, because you said you were clearing. I wondered if you were taking down everything or some things, or.
Well, at my farm, I had them take down everything.
Yeah. It
was just easier, and we had the opportunity to, so we took down everything.
Okay.
And I do have trees along a stream for them. Okay. And I do have trees within the pasture for them to get to.
Okay. So you have some protection and some shade in the summertime. That makes sense. Yeah, it's a weird dynamic. You want the trees to be gone from the fence line from a convenience standpoint, but you want the protection that they provide. When we had the cold snap in December, that was one of our things. Was most of our fields have very good tree lines on the south side of the fields that they're in, which provides them a lot of protection from wind.
Yep.
So when this cold snap happened, I mean, we put more hay out and did some other things, but we didn't really have to do a lot to provide them with a barrier from some of the
elements.
Wind chill, yeah.
Yeah, we try to keep some trees. I do like some trees, but in the fence line, we've had enough fallen where we've kind of instituted a policy where if we're there and they're small, they're going.
Yep. Makes sense. Okay. Well, I think that's a pretty good recap of, at least for us, what happened in November, December. Is there any other?
I think that's the main things that happened in November, December.
Okay. Was there anything happening next week on the farm for you guys?
Oh, next week. So, we have some calves. We're going to have to start trying to get them ready to wean here soon. So weaning is something we start to think about, making sure we got a creep feeder out there for them, for our fall calves.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also are, I guess, similar to you, probably pulling a bull here soon.
Yes. Yep.
So
the bull will come out this week. Hopefully by the time we have our next recording, we will have a bull out. That would be a goal for both of us. Probably. Maybe not for you. You might actually let yours sit in a little bit longer.
Let him sit maybe to the end of the month, but definitely sometime here soon he's going to be going.
Yeah, ours should come out this week because that will be our 60-day window. So aside from that, we also have an older cow who's struggling a little bit, so we're going to make sure that we get those calves ready. At least her calf is going to get pulled off at the end of the month. The rest of them will probably be on for about another month.
Okay.
Past that point, but that one in particular will probably come off a little early. She's an older cow. This is her last calf for sure, but just to try and make the end of her life humane, we aren't going to pull her down very hard if we can avoid it.
Don't really push her if you don't have to, and probably the calves a little more efficient if you just go ahead and give them grain and a little bit of hay supplement anyway.
Yep. So that's our plan. We have a twin that just weaned off of her. This is actually a twin to the one that just weaned off of a bottle of milk.
Okay.
So these two twins will end up together getting fed. So that should work out pretty well, because otherwise it's kind of difficult to have a bottle calf. Once you wean them off of the bottle, it's hard to figure out where to put them.
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing when they're on the bottle, it's hard to figure out where to put them, but
even more so when you got
even more so when they're just getting a little bit of feed once a day to make sure that they get
their hay supplement. Hay.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we just ordered a new hay feeder that hopefully will arrive. That's primarily for the alpaca and this bottle calf. So,
okay,
just something where they maybe won't waste quite so much hay. They're not the cleanest eaters. None of them are. They're just taking that hay and enjoying it as a bedding material. Expensive as that hay is, they don't care. So,
yeah. So you get an off the ground feeder, I guess, or
yeah, we'll get one with a cradle to it a little bit, just because all these animals they don't need that much hay, and we don't have that much pressure. We don't need a ring necessarily for them, but we need to find something that works a little bit better for maintaining.
I've seen some of the sheep and goat people use the cattle panels sometimes around the bales.
Yeah, and what we might end up doing actually is it's got a cradle, but we may put one of those panels in the bottom of it, just so that they can't pull out quite such large amounts at a time. Sort of similar to people using hay bags.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another topic we could discuss is hay feeding. I think we've talked a little bit about our approaches, but talk about hay rings and feeders and bags and all those concepts.
Okay. Yeah, we've hit that. Probably our hay feeding, but yeah, we could definitely
touch on some different styles of feeders that we maybe don't use typically for cattle, but are available for small ruminants, horses, etc. So, because there are some interesting options out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's an interesting topic for another day. But that's the one thing, we do have a new feeder coming, so I'm kind of excited about that.
Right. We'll hear about it next time.
Sounds good. So with that, we'll see you guys next week with another new episode.
Thank you, guys.
Have You Heard is a production of the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, along with the Department of Biosystems and Agricultural Engineering. Discover what's wildly possible at ca.uky.edu.